everyone. Thank you for joining in and welcome to DXP Deconstructed. I am Prateek Jain and I will be your host today. In this show, we deconstruct tools, solutions, technologies, architectures, and strategies required to build scalable digital experience platforms. And along those lines, today I'm joined by Shamir Duverseau to talk about marketing automation and marketing strategies. Shamir brings decades of experience in the MarTech space and is also an expert in the digital transformation. Shamir is also a co-founder, managing director, and chief strategist at the Smart Panda Labs. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the show, Shamir.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for making time for this episode. I'm really looking forward to learn what you have to share about marketing automation, marketing strategies.
So looking forward to chatting with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, but before we get started, right, tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to co-found Smart Panda Labs.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I unfortunately have decades of experience, which the math works out right. I don't like hearing it, but the math certainly works out to that degree. Way back in the early 2000s, when the internet was really just starting out, I shouldn't say just starting out, but starting out to be this big significant thing in business, this key integral part of any enterprise business, I really found a lot of struggles in people making that transformation. I worked at NBC Universal at the time when I kind of started in digital marketing, went on and spent some time at Disney and then at Marriott. And one consistent challenge I think that really arose was this lack of communication between the technology side of things, IT, and the marketing side. Unlike the pre-internet age, these two groups really needed to be in lock sync. They really need to be in alignment in order to maximize what they're trying to create, this digital customer experience. And because they hadn't been speaking the same language for so many years, it was hard for them to make that translation. So after kind of going through that cycle a few times, we started Smart Panda Labs because we felt like we could help bring together those marketing ideas and that technical execution, bring those things into alignment so people can create and really optimize that digital experience they're looking for.
Got it. So to bridge this gap between the IT teams and the marketing team, right? So what are some of the services offered by Smart Panda Labs, and how do you help improve the digital experience for your customers?
Sure. Well, we say digital experience, and we know that's very, very broad. There's a lot of things included in digital experience. While we take all those things into consideration, we really help customers focus on that post-click experience. So after they see the advertising, after they interact with social, whatever the case is, when that person clicks and says, I want to engage with your site, I want to see what it is that you offer, I want to make a decision about potentially becoming a customer of yours or perhaps growing my relationship with you, that's what really help drive that experience. So personalization of that experience, testing into better user experiences, marketing automation, as you kind of mentioned up front, in terms of how we're communicating with you now and building that relationship. So we're really looking at driving down customer acquisition costs, improving acquisition and retention rates, and ultimately improving lifetime value.
Got it. So do most of your customers come for these strategic needs, like they come for, hey, help us improve the user engagement or help us build our brand loyalty, or do they also come for asking for specific services, hey, just help us with our personalization strategy, which are more solution-specific services? What kind of customers do you have? And where do you work?
Yeah, we have a mix. So as you mentioned, we have some that come to us on a very specific engagement. They need something kind of stood up, set up, outlined. We have some customers that come to us just to help them roadmap out what they need to do to drive the digital experience. They know that they want to do these particular things. Perhaps they see their competitors do, or they see in the marketplace in general, but they don't know how to get there. So they need us to kind of say, well, here are the pieces and parts you need to get there. The customer data you need access to, the technical platforms you need access to, the tactics you need to implement in order to drive those kinds of experiences. And then the lion's share of our customers really are helping to manage those experiences on an ongoing basis, and then just iterate and improve. So running experimentation, running personalization, running marketing automation, maintaining, making sure they understand that none of those things are set it and forget it, but that you have to keep improving and keep adapting to the market and to competitors and to people in general.
Got it. And it's interesting you mentioned about the post-click experience, right? So, I mean, a lot of marketers focus on the attract phase, like bringing the customers on their platform or just attracting them, right? And not too much on the post-click experience, right? I mean, measuring it and all. So what are your preferred tools or ways or approaches to start with this? So when a customer comes to you, like, do you start with the audit of the customer journey, assessing the tools? What's your typical way of starting and discovering the underlying problem and before getting to the solutions?
Yeah, to be honest, before we even get into tools and get into tactics, we really start with understanding their business apart from maybe the specific things they want to do in the digital space. Just to understand, what are your business goals? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to drive? Are things like valuation important? Are stock prices important? What are those metrics that really matter at that C-suite level? And then we say, okay, great. Now, how do we marry your marketing goals to those bigger business goals? And then we say, what tactics do you need to drive those marketing goals to hit those metrics so that it can therefore influence those bigger C-suite metrics? And now that we understand those tactics that are so important, okay, what are the pieces and parts that we need to drive them? Where do we need room for improvement in order to do that? And then at that point, we get into things like the tools and the assessments of, okay, you're going to need to bring on an experimentation platform because you're not doing any A/B testing, or you need a more robust marketing automation platform so that we can do more personalized communications to your customers, those kinds of things.
Got it. And given that you typically come at the post-click experience, right, do you have an opportunity to choose the marketing automation platform or the tooling, or most of the time you already have something and it's just that you have to use what exists and bring your strategies on top of those tools and the approaches that they've already adopted?
That's a great question. To be honest, I'd say probably 70-80% of the time, when it comes to marketing automation specifically, they tend to have tools that will do what needs to be done. So there are times that we have to actually implement a tool, but most times that's not the case. Most times they have tools that can do it. We just have to maybe configure it a bit and then make sure they're getting the most out of the tools. To be honest, most legacy enterprise customers, they have very robust tools. They just aren't getting nearly all they can out of them. They're not truly driving true ROI out of those tools by truly taking advantage of an investment they've made. So they may have an enterprise tool like a Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is an excellent, incredibly robust tool, but they don't know how to get the most out of it, how to drive the most value from it. And that's where we usually come into play.
Got it. And that was one of my questions as well, right? I mean, so a lot of these enterprises, right, they make a huge upfront investment to buying these tools, but they don't know how to fully utilize them. What are some of the challenges or the things that you have noticed, or the reasons why these agencies or these businesses are not able to utilize the investment that they have made in these big marketing automation tools or around that, right? What are some of the things and challenges you have seen?
Yeah, it's funny. One of our core values as a company is they don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times that's what happens. So You see a particular experience out in the marketplace. Maybe you go and you shop online and you see something as simple as a cart abandoned email come to you, but you don't know what it takes to actually make that email happen, to actually create a campaign like that, to measure what it's doing, and then to iterate on that. So where we typically come into play is helping them figure out and educate them on those pieces and parts, and then helping them do that. So a lot of times it's just a lack of knowledge of how those things actually work. And then, as we kind of alluded to earlier, one of the big reasons we started Smart Panda Labs is because, unfortunately, marketing and IT often don't communicate very well. And a lot of times these tools are owned by IT. So marketing has to communicate and say, hey, this is what I want to happen. IT has to try to translate that as best they can and make that happen. But when marketing is speaking French and IT is speaking Chinese, it's hard to get across exactly what needs to happen there. And then marketing ends up disappointed because it's like, oh, this isn't what we asked for. This isn't working right. IT is like, hey, we did what we told you, what you told us you wanted done. I don't know what to tell you. So really, we kind of come into play and kind of play a diplomat, right? We're the translator. We understand, the French that marketing is speaking. Yep. We're able to translate that into the Chinese that IT needs to hear. Now, all of a sudden, everybody gets it. And then we're able to play nicely together in the sand lot, and we're able to kind of move forward and execute what needs to be executed.
Got it. And is it also sometimes the skill set that is required to do this, right? I mean, you as an agency obviously come into it as a digital strategist and able to speak both the languages of the marketeers as well as the IT team, right? But then at the same time, the skills required to understand it, like the cart abandoned example, right? I mean, why does it matter? What needs to be tracked? What data needs to be tracked and all, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's too difficult to kind of know all the matrices in advance, right? So is it challenging for you to kind of work with marketeers, or is it challenging for you to work with IT teams to make them understand in your experience?
I mean, there's a challenge on both sides, I suppose. But it's not hard. I mean, once you kind of understand what's important to each group, right? So
Yep.
the IT team doesn't care as much about, doesn't care as much about things like the creative aspects of it, right? Or perhaps the overall marketing strategy behind it that's fitting into. They don't care about things like, branding and value propositions. So let's not spend time talking about that. Let's spend time talking about functionally what needs to happen, how we increase the uptime of the campaign, how we make sure the campaign isn't throwing errors, the quality of it. Those are the things we talk about with them. And then on the flip side, marketing doesn't really care about the eccentricities of the configurations and the settings that need to happen, how exactly we're creating these audiences, what things we have to take into account, the governance and rules that need to go into place. They care about what are we messaging? What's the value prop? What's the branding? How often are we communicating to them? Are we tying our customers out? Are we driving retention? Are we increasing lifetime value? Right? Those are the things that marketers care about. So then we focus on those kinds of conversations. And then on the backside, our job is to put all that together and say,
Right.
this is how all these pieces to the puzzle all fit together in a nice way. And then to fill those gaps and say, all right, marketing, here's what we're going to work with you to do. All right, IT, here's what we're going to work with you to do. Oftentimes for us, it's hands-on in the tool itself, actually doing those configurations, building and managing those campaigns, doing the analysis, the measurement, the testing, and so forth to actually execute those things and make them happen.
Got it. So one of the ways that you're saying to help facilitate the collaboration between the IT team and the marketing team to bring and strategists like yourself into the mix, and then who can speak both the languages. But as an organization, how can they themselves be ready for such thing? Because whenever they make any investment in their marketing automation setups or in general their digital strategies, right, they know they are going to use or need some IT team, right? Are there any best practices they can follow upfront to minimize this conflict and collaborate better on their own?
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things, as we kind of mentioned up front, is they have to align on goals. So we mentioned we start with those bigger business goals. Those are the goals
Right.
that transcend marketing, that transcend IT, that transcend all the different departments. Well, they each need to understand how their goals stream up to those bigger business goals. And if they both are doing that, then that means they're both doing the same thing. They're just coming at it from different angles. So now they have to have an appreciation for the fact of, this is the angle that you're coming at this and solving this problem from. This is the angle that we're coming from. So we're both doing the same thing. We're on the same team here. We're just doing it from different aspects, right? So when you get that kind of alignment, which of course starts always with leadership, but then comes down to the individual team members, that's going to help bring everyone on the same page of, okay, if I do this right and you do that right, then that's going to roll up and hit those larger goals that are so important to the organization.
Got it. So one of the challenges, as we spoke, is between the marketing team and the IT team. There's other side of it where sometimes the sales and the marketing team, right, or the sales technologies and the marketing technologies needs to come together as well. Do you also see sometimes challenges on that side of things? Because as we have been noticing, right, a lot of these tools, either sales oriented or marketing oriented, they are not independent anymore. They're coming together to have a unified experience for their overall revenue and the digital strategy, right? So what's your experience of collaborating on that side of the things? Have you seen challenges on that side, or is it okay, once you are satisfied with the marketing team, we are good to go? Yeah.
No. There's all kinds of challenges that we see there. It's funny. I think what happens a lot, and this kind of happens from two sides, both from inside the organization and outside.
Yeah.
So from inside the organization, you get some frustration there, maybe some bad history with IT. So those groups, sales, marketing, they decide, okay, well, I'm going to go to an outside source. I'm going to get this outside tool. This is going to solve what I need to get solved. And that way I won't have to deal with IT. But unfortunately, each group kind of goes in their own silo and does that. So those tools don't necessarily coordinate, collaborate with each other. They don't communicate. They don't integrate with each other. Each one's kind of doing their own thing, and maybe they're hitting the same customer multiple times. They're not able to see what the other group is sending or communicating. So it causes all kinds of issues ultimately for the customer that
Right.
they can be kind of a bit blind to going into the situation. Then on the flip side, you have SaaS providers coming in saying, we are the solution to all your problems. All you do is stand up this tool. It'll take 2 hours. You'll be up and running. You push this button. You won't need to do anything. No technical help involved. It's all easy. And that's a bold-faced lie. It's never, ever like that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if your company is like, two guys in the corner shop, it's like that. But we're talking about these legacy enterprise organizations. It's never like that. It's never that easy. But the combination of those two things creates issues where people are just making decisions in silos for what they feel like is best for them. And I get it. We're human. We're selfish. We think first and foremost about ourselves, our own team, our own group, what we need to get done. But what we don't realize is, well, now the customer is experiencing these multiple things that are not connected, that are disjointed. And they're frustrated because what I see on the website isn't the same thing that's happening when I talk to the salesperson, isn't the same thing when I talk to customer support.
Right.
Because they don't have all access to the same information. The customer's confused. It's like, I'm still talking to company A, right? So why don't you have access to the information? So it's really about thinking about it from the customer standpoint and saying, look, we need to work together, not as disparate groups, but we need to work together to really organize and think about what we need so that we can solve this technologically, certainly, but we can also solve this with the right processes and resources that we need as well. And when they do that, really they're saving money, right? Because maybe they don't need 3 different platforms to do this. Maybe they just need one and need to understand how sales is going to use the platform, how marketing is going to use the platform, how IT is, or HR, or PR, or wherever the other groups are. As almost everyone needs are taken into account, you'll probably get much faster ROI, and you'll definitely have a much better customer experience by doing that.
Got it. So how important is it to have a composable solution in place? Because as things are evolving, let's say with AI coming in, more tools coming in, and like you mentioned, right? Hey, this is a new SaaS tool that we want to try, right? And it happens all the time. I mean, we have seen with our customers who just want to integrate a couple of plugins just to see how they work. And because they have been sold or they are interested or intrigued about what it can do, and they just want to try it, right? But a lot of time your stack doesn't allow you to integrate that very well, right?
Yeah.
So how important it is to define or identify the composition capability or rather knowing the composable architectures of the solution tech that you're using, right? I mean, do you pay attention to that upfront, or have you seen the customers who are not bothered about it too much because, hey, we have invested in one platform and we are okay, we can live with it for a while?
I think they don't probably pay enough attention to it as they should. I mean, in the end, it's just a foundation, and you're going to build on top of it. So it's going to change and iterate over time, and it should. But you need to factor that in as you build your foundation. That this is going to change. If you put it too much in stone at the beginning, and you don't give yourself any flexibility, in a couple of years you're going to be in trouble because, as you mentioned, new technology is going to come into play, and you won't be able to fit those into the stack, or at least experiment with fitting those into the stack and saying, hey, does this make sense for us? So that's usually a huge challenge. So you've got to have a flexible, modern architecture in place. And that's usually where we see the problem. Legacy enterprise organizations tend to have a lot of legacy proprietary systems that are not built to talk to other systems. And that's usually where they end up running into the challenge. So then they end up coming and saying, well, we're going to need to invest in updating our systems. But then when they see the dollar figures involved in doing that, they say, we can't spend that. We're not going to do that.
Right.
Well, what they don't often think about is that the longer you take to do it, that the bigger that dollar figure is getting. It's not, the problem isn't going to go away because you've ignored it. It's just going to get more expensive. Right. So at some point, you're going to have to invest in saying, we need to build a more modern foundation that's going to allow us to iterate and be a lot more nimble than we are today. And a lot of times, those more nimble foundations, as you know, can integrate to some degree with those proprietary systems and get some key data out of that. And at least that's a starting point. And then we can build on top of that. But you got to get started today. You can't wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this reminds me of one of our customers who kind of came to us for a very simple CMS choice, and then they moved to a SaaS-based CMS instead of a custom-built CMS. And the thing that we were trying to convince them was that, I mean, the flexibility, the ease of integrations once you go over there, right? Because the SaaS platform did not have enough integrations available to do things like as simple as personalization or using a CDP, right? I mean, at least at that point in time, the plugins were not there. And but they wanted to use a SaaS-based solution to get up and running soon and have a better editing or authoring experience as a content author. So there was always a challenge between the IT team and the marketing team to kind of make that kind of a comparison and then convince the marketeers to use that. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it happens all the time. And a lot of times, you probably run into this too. Company X, SaaS provider X will come in and say, look, all you need is our solution. It will do everything. We have this robust family of solutions that will do everything. And again, sometimes you take that with a grain of salt too. And it's just like, 80% of the things you're talking about were purchased and they don't really integrate with the rest of your stuff yet. And they probably won't for the next 5 years until you guys figure that out. So it's not going to be as clean as you're selling it to be. So it becomes a bit of a dance, right? To really figure out what is the right mix of technologies, what's the right combination of things that's going to get you to where you need to be, and not being oversold by a lot of these SaaS providers, but really saying, okay, we need to push all the technology and all the technology providers aside and just say, what is it we want to do as an organization? Where do we want to go? okay,
Right.
now what provider or combination of providers best accelerates that for us and allows us to accomplish that. And sometimes we get so enamored and focused on the technology itself that we lose sight of our own goals in terms of what we're trying to accomplish.
Got it. Yeah, this also kind of, I mean, one of the things that you say, right? Start with small, experiment a lot, and then test it a lot, right? I mean, so starting with something small, which is flexible, and then build it from there.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense. So, Shamir, how do businesses identify the areas where their digital experiences are not meeting their customer needs? So, what I'm trying to understand is how do you approach these audits, the customer journey audits, and what are the different tactics that you use to call out, hey, this is where you can do better? If you can share an example around it, would really help.
Sure. So usually it just comes down to kind of understanding the metrics of what they're measuring, right? Which in and of itself, can be a bit of an exercise just in terms of what is or isn't currently being measured. But that's just operate on the assumption that things are being measured here. It really comes down to kind of understanding where the gaps are. So this is a funnel. This is a journey. A lot of the organizations that we deal with have much longer journeys because the purchase is much more considered. It's a larger purchase, so it takes a little bit more time to make a decision. So I think about an example of a client we have in executive education. And a lot of what they do, the courses they offer are, a couple of $1,000, $3,000-$4,000, sometimes even more than that. That's not a decision you're going to make in a moment. This isn't on Amazon, picking up a quick, widget for $20, right? It's going to take some time to decide to spend $3,000 on my education. So because of that, you get multiple touches, you get multiple visits. So what we have to kind of understand and do is say, okay, well, what is each tactic? What role is that playing in the decision? So how are they first learning about you? How are they learning about your product? Maybe that's via advertising. When they come to the site, what content are they consuming? How are they reacting to that content? Are they coming back? Are we communicating? Are we building value, right? So now you've got all these different touch points across the website, across email, across advertising, across social. And you're trying to understand, well, how each of these components contributing to what it is that you're doing, if they're contributing at all. And then where are those gaps? So, okay, there seems to be a big gap here between the person moving from perhaps consideration to decision. And now we need to find a way to fill that gap and provide the person the information they're looking for at this particular stage of the journey to move them and get them across that bridge to the decision phase. And maybe now the gap is, okay, they're ready to make a decision, but now they're running into issues with actually the registration process. Well, okay, what are those issues there? Well, maybe they can't find something in the process that's allowing them to easily check out. Okay, we need to find that gap, right? We identify that. Yeah. And each of those are opportunities for tests, right? They're opportunities to experiment and say, okay, based on what we're seeing here, based on the data, it seems to be this is the issue. Let's test out a solution and see if that works. Oh, great, that worked. Okay, perfect. Let's implement that solution. Or, oh, no, perhaps that didn't work. That didn't quite meet the need. Okay, let's explore this some more. So you're really just trying to say there's a long journey here of these multiple points that people have to jump across. And basically, you're trying to optimize each one. It's not a huge home run hit, but you're really trying to just optimize each one along the way. And it's a nonstop game because, again, competitors are changing, people are changing, the market's changing. So you're constantly trying to isolate those and iterate constantly to keep people moving all the way down that path.
Yeah, that makes sense. So start with, identify the journey, break it down, and do it piece by piece, right? And I follow a lot of your posts on LinkedIn, which typically talk about this experimentation, personalization, and overall digital experience, right? One of the things, by the way, I love about your LinkedIn posts are the GIFs that you use along with each of your LinkedIn posts. I particularly remember, I think, an R2-D2 GIF from Star Wars to talk about AI and the human touch, right? So what inspires you to do these GIFs, use these GIFs in your LinkedIn posts? Is that part of your digital strategy to build your personal brand on the LinkedIn?
No, I think it's just a reflection of my generation. I'm a kid of the 80s, so things in the 80s in particular really kind of resonate with me and stand out to me. I have probably a strong emotional connection to those things, so it's very easy for me to relate that to a song, a movie, a TV show from my childhood or adolescence that really kind of resonates that thought that I'm trying to get across.
There are so many posts, right? One other thing was, I think you were trying to explain to your father, right? I think the tic-tac-toe sign versus the pound sign, it was, so things change, right? How we consume data or the content from these different multi-touch interfaces, right? So which brings to my next question as well, right? What's your preferred tool set or the technology set to build a multi-touch data-driven experiences, which is also authentic? I know you spoke about Salesforce Marketing Cloud as one of the tool, but then what's your preferred tool and why?
Sure. So from a multi-touch standpoint, marketing automation, Salesforce Marketing Cloud and Blue Shift are the two that we work with most often. We find that gives us a good spectrum, a good fit for different types of industries, different types of enterprise, mid-market and enterprise customers in terms of what they may or may not need exactly from the tool. Both compatible with different infrastructures and systems, so the ability to integrate with different structures and systems. That's not to say that other tools are bad. There are plenty of other tools in the market, and they're great. We're particularly of the mindset that we don't want to be experts in everything just because we feel like we can't be experts in everything. So let's find a good couple of partners that we feel like we can really be experts in, that we feel like can meet the overwhelming majority of needs of our customers, and really focus on that. And that we feel allows us to deliver a better experience to our clients. So that's why we focus. It's not because necessarily those tools are heads and shoulders better than everything else. It's just we found them to be good tools. We found them to be good partners. And we find that those meet the needs, both in the short term and the long term, of the customers that we deal with. So let's focus on that, become good at those tools, and that's going to allow us to best service our clients.
Got it. And do you also use Optimizely a lot along with the Salesforce Marketing Cloud?
We do. So from an experimentation, personalization standpoint, we use Optimizely, A/B Tasty, and Web Trends Optimized are the three that we focus on there as well. So again, there are an enormous amount of tools that do experimentation and personalization. Those three we find definitely meet the needs of multiple clients, multiple industries, multiple organization sizes. Again, all proving themselves to be good partners from our standpoint. And both with what we talked about from a marketing automation standpoint and also experimentation, also, different price points as well. What can a customer potentially afford, especially if they're just getting started with these technologies, and making sure we also try to take that into account as well, because we want them to get the most of their investment. How much are they going to spend given the size of their company? How much do they have to spend? We'd rather they get started, right, and start moving and start building that case, that ROI case and argument that can be made to the CFOs of the world, rather than have to wait and say, well, this is outside your price range. There's no way you can afford this. So we're just going to skip this entire initiative. And that's not the course of wisdom.
Got it. So, and how would you compare these two, Optimizely versus Salesforce Marketing Cloud? Like, are there specific scenarios or the use cases where you would prefer one versus the other?
Yeah, I think it comes down a lot to complexity, how complicated, and not even so much how complicated the customer journey is, but more the complexity and depth and complication of the back-end systems. So, for example, Salesforce Marketing Cloud is a great tool if you already have a Salesforce infrastructure. Yep. It's not the only one by any stretch that integrates with Salesforce, but obviously there's a significant and robust integration with Salesforce out of the box with Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Since that exists, a lot of times there's a case to take advantage of that very quickly, rather than having to kind of come in and build a brand new integration with perhaps some third-party tool. Where perhaps if you're starting from scratch, then maybe starting with something as robust and technical as Salesforce Marketing Cloud may be a little bit too much for you at this particular time, especially given maybe what your customer is, your customer journey, given what your industry is. So maybe it's something more straightforward, like online retail, for example. Maybe something like a Blue Shift would be a better solution. It checks a number of boxes automatically. It helps you with marketing automation, helps you as a CDP, helps you with drive some personalization, some retargeting. So now all of a sudden you have one tool that checks a number of boxes and allows you to very quickly integrate with your e-commerce platform with something like a Shopify or something like that. So that might be a better solution for you in that particular scenario. So really it's about understanding the exact needs of the customer. Again, not just their needs today, but their needs tomorrow. And then understanding, okay, based on where you are today and where you want to go, we feel like this tool will get you there in the short term and in the long term. We don't want them to have to switch in 2 years or 3 years because they've outgrown this particular tool.
Got it. And so something along the lines of the industries, right? I mean, I know you have worked with various customers coming from different industries, right? And as a digital strategist, you don't not only bridge a gap between marketing teams and IT teams, help them out with the solutions, strategies and all, right? How important is it for you to understand the industry nuances? Like you mentioned about the higher ed or rather the retail industry, right? These industries are very different. The way the expectation, the matrices that matters to these industries are very, very different. So how challenging it is for you to know or these industries in depth to be able to make the required recommendation over there?
To be honest, it's not as challenging as you would think. when we started Smart Panda Labs, one of the decisions we made up front is that we wanted to be industry agnostic. We did not want to say we just specialize in travel or we just specialize in healthcare. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but one of the reasons for that is because we feel like when we come into a new industry, we come in with fresh eyes. We come in as the customer. Oftentimes in industries, industry experts, people who have been in the industry for a long time, perhaps for decades, they look at things a very specific way. This is the way things are done in healthcare. This is the way things are done in education. Well, that doesn't mean it's the right way. That's just the way that the pattern has developed over the course of time.
Right.
Whereas when we come in, it's very easy for us to question that and say, well, why are we doing it like that? Because if I was your customer and I was coming in, that doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't see it like that. I would see it like this. So we like the fact of coming into a new industry because it gives us a very fresh set of eyes. It makes us feel much, much more like the customer looks at things. And it gives that perspective that allows us to be more objective in improving the customer experience, as opposed to saying, well, okay, this is travel and we specialize in travel, and travel, this is the way things are done. Well, now you got more of a sea of sameness, and that doesn't necessarily serve the customer in the best way. Often it doesn't.
Got it. No, that's an interesting take. So we at Excellent are also kind of industry agnostic, but then slowly and steadily we are realizing that there is a certain benefit of knowing the industry. I mean, not like in a way where you just become a particular industry specific, but then at the same time, just knowing a little bit more about it. And in fact, right, I mean, some of these like Salesforce Cloud, right? Salesforce has non-profit cloud or a health cloud, right? So it's the same product underlying, it's the same thing. They have just kind of mashed it up to kind of make it look and promote to a particular industry, right? Have you come across the customers who have asked for that specific industry experience, or because in the customer mind, it's always like, hey, do you have experience in my industry? Do you really know what it means? How it matters to me? Have you come across those kind of customers or prospects?
Oh yeah, we certainly have. And we were fortunate in that because we started being industry agnostic, we gained experience in multiple industries. So, we have a handful of industries where we particularly have good experience: real estate, healthcare, travel, education, a couple of others. So we can speak intelligently to those different industries. And the thing is, to be honest, you and I both know, even within an industry, there's all kinds of nuance, right? Yep. I mean, you say travel, well, that can be a lot of things. Yep. Are you an airline? Are you a hotel? Are you a cruise line? Are you a rental car company? Are you a vacation rental, right? And each of those things has very, very different nuances in terms of how you deal with your customers as well. So the broad industry experience that we have gained has served us well and certainly allowed us to do that. And then there are times where a person feels like, well, you don't have experience in our particular industry at all. And that's a deal breaker for us. And we understand that. And that's fine. We, in those situations, we even often say, well, perhaps we can refer you to someone else that has more experience in this industry. So we understand that as well. So I think there's a balance, right? I think you don't want to get too narrow and too myopic with your industry experience. But I think, to your point, there is value in just understanding in general the industry and some of its nuances so that you can more quickly get up to speed and speak intelligently to it. So for us, and I think for you guys as well, there's a balancing act there, right? You don't want to go too far in one direction or the other. You want to keep a good balance. And fortunately, I think in doing that, both of us have gained experience in enough industries that we feel like, we can effectively serve the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. After a while, like you develop enough experience to kind of work across the industries, and like, in fact, right. So one of our customers who is coming from the e-commerce or the retail industry, right. So for them, it's important to know that, hey, can you do the email marketing? Because a lot of our customers who are bending the cart or doing the wish list, we need to understand you can deliver that experience. But then, let's say if there's another customer who is running a boutique shop, right, they need more like a personalized recommendation, not just over an email, but via different channels as well, right? Or be it in store. So it's a completely different understanding, though the underlying concepts of using personalized, giving the personalized experience, creating that engagement, nurturing them still remains largely the same. So I get what you're saying. And yes, we keep on hearing that as well. And in fact, even our sales team, for example, right? And that's another side of the thing, right? Where, again, I coming from the IT team, right? Always have this challenge. Hey, do we have experience with the higher ed? Sure. We can do that. We have worked this kind of work, but then can we speak the higher ed to an extent where we can talk and understand each and every aspect of it? Maybe not, unless we have gained that experience, right? So that's again becomes an internal challenge to kind of convince our sales team as an agency that you need not necessarily have all that industry experience even to work within that industry, especially when you're starting.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of good insights with that. So let me ask you, right? What are some of the trends that you are seeing in the MarTech space in the recent times? Again, I'm bringing it up again. You have been around there for a long time. You've seen things changing, the tools tools evolving, the approaches changing, and all, right? What are your thoughts on that? And how do you see the role of the AI playing in the digital marketing space?
Well, that is the trend of the day for sure.
Yeah, you can't get off the calls without asking a question about an AI, right?
No, you certainly can't. AI is a bit of a, it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, it's you can do some incredible things with it. You really can in terms of speed and efficiency, in a number of different ways. And most every MarTech company that we work with, and I'm sure that you work with as well, has some application of AI in their stack at this point, and how they're leveraging and using it. Our biggest caution to our customers and our clients and our potential even is just it's another thing to experiment with and kind of roll into your processes via experimentation. It's not something to simply come in and say, okay, we're going to roll in and we're going to invest $2 million in AI this year. Well, how you invest that money, where you're investing that money, the best way for you in your particular industry and for your particular customer to leverage and use AI can be markedly different than it is for your competitor. So you need to test into that and understand, where exactly are we making this investment? How can we best use and leverage this? Is that with internal processes? Is that with customer-facing experiences? Is it some combination of it? If it is customer-facing experiences, what experiences are best served by AI? Is it recommendations? Is it email communications? Is it personalization? Right? There's all these different ways that it can be used, but you've got to be able to measure and say, okay, we can definitively say we've done some testing and it's added value here. Okay, well, now let's try this. Oh, that didn't work as well as we thought it would. We're going to need to pivot here and make a change. So with anything, you've got to have a framework in place to do A/B testing and experimentation. And AI is just another element that you kind of put into that to say, great, let's test it in these different ways, these different platforms, these different use cases, and see, is this working for us? Is this working for our customer? Or is it not? So that we can make the right choices and changes and the right investments in AI.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, don't use the tool just for the AI capabilities, but then if it's making sense to the use cases that you're trying to solve, that makes sense.
Right.
So, and with this, right, I mean, how do you see the role of the digital strategist changing or evolving now with this, again, this AI being one, but then other trends and all, right? As a digital strategist yourself, how do you see what kind of problems you would be solving, let's say a few years down the line? Will it change, or the underlying things would still remain the same?
Honestly, I think the underlying things will remain the same. I think it's still the two fundamental steps here are saying, step one, we need to build the right foundation. Step two, we need to create a framework that allows us to adapt and to change. And then ultimately, if you do those two fundamental first things, then step three is, okay, now how do we build a culture around that? And how do we build a culture of innovation, of experimentation, of growing and changing, right? And then once you do that, establishing that culture and that framework around innovation, well, now you got to hold that together, right? And you need to drive that forward. So I think that's really what the digital strategist is going to be about. It's about saying, how do we set the foundation for it? How do we build the right framework for success? And then once we do those two things, then the third step is going to be, how do we hold that together moving forward? And I think that's what the modern digital strategist is really going to be about. It's about understanding those three pieces. Where is my organization in that range of maturity? And then once I isolate that, how do I get them to the next step? And then how do I hold that together moving forward?
Right. And one additional thing is, right, being aware of what's going on and how do you use these technologies like AI to your advantage and not just use it blindly, right? Because it's important that we make use of it in a way that kind of serves a purpose.
Exactly.
All right. That's really, really great information. So one of the last questions, Shamir, how do you recommend businesses choose the right MarTech vendor for their specific needs? Like what should businesses look for when they are going out and looking for these specialists or marketing technology advisors or strategists?
Yeah, I think it's really going to be about the methodology and mindset of who they're working with, right? So it can't be someone who says that their particular technology is kind of a one size fits all. That their solution is the solution to every single problem. It really comes back to what we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, which is, what are your specific business goals? And that has to be the starting point. And we have to say, how does this map to those business goals to make sure this is meeting your needs, and not just simply checking a box of saying, hey, we've put this in place, and oh yeah, I've heard of those guys, or I've heard of that tool. Great. Oh, we're using that now too. Wonderful. Well, that may not be the best tool for you, right? That may not be the best use case for you. So I'd say that the number one thing that someone can keep in mind is, when you start that discovery process, when you start those conversations, how much time are they taking up front to talk about you, to talk about your goals, your challenges, the things you're trying to do as a business, has a team, has a business leader, has an organization. How much time are they trying to understand your particular pain points? Because the solution is going to spring from that. It's the solution to a problem. If they don't understand the problem, then they can't offer a meaningful solution. If they come in the door and they immediately feel like, hey, we already have the solution to your problem because we already understand your problem, and they haven't even had a conversation with you, that to me is a red flag. Because you're not trying to understand me, you're just assuming that you understand my problem and that your solution is the best thing ever. You need to take some time to get to know me. This is going to be a relationship. Get to know me. Otherwise, this relationship isn't going to go very far.
Got it. And especially because these needs keeps on changing and evolving as the market evolves. So you need to understand the business, like you said, in the beginning and now as well, right? So thank you so much, Shamir. I think these were some really great insights about the overall marketing automation strategies, tooling, and how do IT teams and marketing teams collaborate effectively, and so many other things, right? I'm really thankful to you for being here on the show. And for our audience, thank you for joining in. We will be back again in the next episode with some other exciting concepts around the DXP. Thank you for joining, Shamir, and thank you for being here.
Thank you again for having me. I really enjoyed it.